here at the IRS again to talk to you more about the income tax. Today I want to talk about the income tax in regards to the Constitution. So what is the Constitution? If we look at Article 6 in the Constitution, it says this: "This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land." Well, that's it. This is the supreme law of the land. Now, if it continues on, "And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding." So I'm in California. If California passes a law contrary to this Constitution, does it stand or fail? It's supposed to fail according to Article 6. Let's continue on in Article 6. "The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution." They're talking about the United States Constitution, not the Constitution of some other country. Some legislators I've talked to, I think they read a Constitution from some other country, because they certainly were talking about this one. The ignorance on this Constitution is really shameful on our elected officials' part. Now, one thing that people talk about is that this Constitution is a living document. That's really not true in my view. Let's look at, we have a case here also talking about that. "The Constitution is a written document. As such, its meaning does not alter. That which it meant when it was adopted, it means now." South Carolina versus U.S. Now, how important is the Constitution? We have another case here, Norton versus Shelby County. "An unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties, affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it has never been passed." That's pretty clear, isn't it? Now let's look at the powers of taxation the Constitution does provide. In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, authority to tax, the Constitution says this: The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay for the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States. Now, duties, imposts, and excises. Excises are manufacturing taxes, so on alcohol, gasoline, cigarettes, just about everything you buy manufactured in the U.S. has excise taxes on it. Imposts and excises, or imposts and duties, are import and export fees. For example, one import fee is a tariff that they talk about sometimes. So what about any limitations on taxation? Now we're in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9. "No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before to be directed." No direct tax. Is the IRS an income tax? Is that a direct tax? I think without question it is. They're coming right to your door. They call your name. They write your name on a piece of paper and mail it to you. So let's see what the difference is between an indirect and direct tax. From Black's Law Dictionary again, indirect tax. Taxes are those demanded in the first instance for one person in the expectation and intention that he shall indemnify himself at the expense of another. Well, what does that mean, indemnify? Well, if I manufacture something, it costs me $5 per item in taxes to produce that item, I'm going to pass that along to the consumer. In other words, I want to indemnify myself. So any taxes on manufacturing, excises, even tariffs and import taxes, we end up paying. That's true. Now, a direct tax, one in which is demanded from one person who it is intended or desired should pay it. That sounds like the income tax to me, because they're coming right to your door. So the Constitution also talks about the 16th. We want to talk about the 16th Amendment. This is an area where there's a lot of confusion. 16th Amendment says this: "The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to census or enumeration." So does the 16th Amendment create an income tax? I think that's for you, you're going to have to decide. But most people do believe that the 16th Amendment creates an income tax. The schools have taught that. The government talks about it sometimes. Most agree there was no income tax before the 16th Amendment. This also means there was no income tax in this country for 147 years. How did we get along without it? Now here's a Supreme Court case that I want to mention in regards talking about the 16th Amendment. And this is what it said. It was settled that the provisions of the 16th Amendment conferred no new taxing power. Stanton versus Baltic Mining. That's pretty clear. To me, that closes the door on the 16th Amendment. But that's not the only problem with the 16th Amendment. 16th Amendment was not ratified. And there's a book called The Law That Never Was. There's a couple volumes to it. Red Beckman and Bill Benson, the authors of this, went to every state in the Union at the time the 16th Amendment was ratified. And they pulled the documents on the ratification and proved that the 16th Amendment did not have enough votes to be in this Constitution or any other. Pretty impressive. Now this has been at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has so far decided not to hear it, which I don't think they're ever going to hear it. Now, does the income tax conflict with any existing provisions in the Constitution? I think it does. Let's look at the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And for those that don't know, the first 10 amendments are considered the Bill of Rights. They're very important. So the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution says this, in part, no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Now we have a case here talking about the Fifth Amendment and filing of income tax returns. So do you waive your Fifth Amendment right? Let's see. Under Sullivan v. United States, there can be no question that one who files a return under oath is a witness within the meaning of the amendment. We're talking about income tax returns in the Fifth Amendment. Sullivan says you're waiving the Fifth Amendment when you file an income tax return. Let's look at the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. The founders thought enough of the word papers to put it in the Constitution. You think they're talking about toilet paper or newspaper? Of course not. They had to be talking about family records, business records, private, personal records. Now, does the Constitution provide for an income tax? It does not look like it to me. You must decide for yourself by looking at this information. Also check my rant on voluntary income tax. I'll be doing more on income tax. This is Steve-Hempfling, and this is one of my rants. Well, now that you listen to my rant, I hope you'll visit my website. There you can get a lot of free information. We have a free catalog you can download or look at. It has lots of books and other articles on your constitutional rights and also dealing with income tax. There's a lot of free information there on that, showing that you're probably not liable for the tax. Might surprise you. We have attorneys, even IRS agents, showing that you're not liable for the income tax. Elected officials talking about how it's voluntary, and an IRS chief saying it's voluntary. Pretty interesting. But anyway, thanks for listening.